In a world where silence often speaks louder than words, a bold and shocking revelation unfolds. Just 5 minutes ago, an unexpected phone call rattled the political landscape. Imagine the tension as Donald Trump reached out to Andrew Belozov, an influential figure cloaked in mystery. "We began from the point of view 17 days ago," Trump announced. But what lay behind those words? Why did they send ripples of panic through the halls of power in Moscow? As the conversation unfolded, the atmosphere thickened with the kind of tension only diplomatic heavyweights could conjure. Picture Andrew Remievich Belozov, his piercing gaze, framed in a calm demeanor, sitting in a modest office that felt almost historic. Dressed in an unremarkable gray suit, he stood out like a shadow in the twilight. His presence was unsettling, the kind that left an enduring mark on anyone who dared to meet his eyes. The old red Soviet phone sat ominously on the glass table, a relic waiting to bridge two worlds. When it rang, Andrew paused, allowing a moment of suspense to stretch like elastic. Finally, he lifted his hand with deliberate slowness, as if sensing the gravity of the impending exchange. "Andrei," Trump's voice crackled through the receiver, tremors hidden beneath the surface. Full of bravado, Trump spoke of surprises and nuclear legacies, a mix of power play and muted admiration. Yet, the undertone was sharp: "Problems have come, and it's time to hold your head down, if you know what I mean." As he spoke, the room seemed to grow colder, the air heavy with unspoken threats. And who was this Arab student from a distant institute, who inadvertently triggered a cascade of tension? The so-called Jeppers sound, what secrets had it unearthed? Andrew's thoughts raced, interpreting the weight of the message. He could hear the barely contained quiver in Trump's voice. Panic danced in the background, an unsettling waltz that whispered of forgotten alliances and impending crisis. "Listen, if you do not act now, the world will change," Trump urged, his voice rising. The stakes escalated, and the realization washed over Andrew: words of diplomacy had turned to veiled threats. Did Trump truly understand the game they were playing? An electric pause lingered, a silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. Andrew's response was vital. How would he navigate this minefield? A standoff loomed, a diplomatic duel that could redefine their intertwined fates. And in the softness of the night, with promises of chaos lingering like a specter, the weight of critical decisions began to take shape. As Andrew contemplated the ramifications, clues of shifting alliances and power dynamics started to coalesce. With each heartbeat, the plot thickened. He knew it was time to act, but how? Would he play the role of the silent observer or take a stand? The clock was ticking down, tension electrifying the air. Each second felt like a heavy drumbeat, signaling an impending clash of titans. What would come next? Perhaps the answer lay hidden in the depths of their tumultuous pasts or the unpredictability of future choices. 5 minutes ago, Andrei lounged in stony silence, awaiting a call that strained the air with tension. When the phone finally rang, he glanced at it, allowing the moment to stretch before reaching for the receiver. "Andrei, my friend," crooned the disembodied voice. It was American, with a chilling familiarity that rippled through him, the voice of a man infamous for wielding power, still holding the weight of nuclear arsenals. As the conversation unfolded, a sense of hidden menace hung thick in the air. "I hope you haven't stirred the pot too much," the voice continued, teasing an imminent surprise. The words carried a weight, a threat of danger just beneath the surface, echoing with unspoken threats. "We're both old acquaintances, you only call when there's trouble. And believe me, trouble is brewing." Andrei leaned back, his expression unreadable. He ritualistically set his glass down, the sound nearly swallowed by a haunting silence. Then came the revelation, a stunning twist. "Our scientists have made an unsettling discovery," he intoned slowly, enveloping his counterpart in a web of uncertainty. "They stumbled upon something baffling, a sound. Some Arab, former student, has dug up anomalies overseas, something elusive." The pause that followed was pregnant with implication. "You see, this leads us to a crossroads: we can either remain silent or retaliate with force." As Trump's voice rose, betraying agitation, the atmosphere thickened. "I'm trying to maintain balance here, Andrei," he insisted, urgency creeping into his tone. The tension mirrored the escalating stakes, revealing the fraught fabric of diplomacy woven with panic. Sometimes, you have to remind a partner of the dance steps. Andre, I'm done dancing, Andre interjected, his voice calm, betraying no fear yet allowing quiet authority to surface. You know this is a pandemic of trust we're dealing with. The days of idle threats have vanished. We must be more direct. Suddenly, Trump's voice crackled through the line, almost pleading. If you wish for peace, we have to be real about this. The stakes swirled around them, a reminder that simple words held no weight anymore. Andre's quiet demeanor belied an internal tempest. History has shown us that your kind often forgets who offered a hand and who concealed a blade. Outside, Moscow breathed softly, oblivious to the weighty words exchanged within the room. The city, usually alive with vigor, seemed to hold its breath as moments ticked by. In their meeting, a tap of a finger upon the table summoned flickering screens displaying movements across regions, and the heartbeat of a brewing conflict echoed within those four walls. Everyone was watching, waiting for a single misstep that could lead to chaos. Show me the data, Andre commanded, the reality of the brewing storm setting forth a fresh resolve. The game was changing, but this time, there would be no second chances. 5 minutes earlier, Donald Trump urgently contacted a key political figure, Andrew Belousov. Their conversation, a mix of tension and strategy, began with a disconcerting phrase. 17 days earlier, the stakes had been set, but now panic loomed. What crucial words did Andrew utter in response to Trump? And what sparked such widespread anxiety after their exchange? Stay tuned until the end of this gripping story to find out. Andrew Rymyovich Belousov was known for his stoic demeanor. He wasn't one for theatrics, his calmness belied the intense emotions brewing underneath. Dressed in a gray suit that blended seamlessly with the shadows of his office, he appeared almost invisible against the backdrop of the rainy cityscape outside. His gaze was sharp, ready to pierce through the political facades laid out before him. When Trump's voice crackled through the old Soviet telephone, Andrew took his time to gather himself before responding. We've been allies long enough, Donald, he began, his voice steady. You reach out only when the storm brews. There was a pause, a charged silence that seemed to ripple through the air. Yet, Trump's voice crackled louder, urgency creeping into his tone. Listen, if there's no desire for peace, we'll sell our strength to the highest bidder. Andrew felt a chill creep down his spine. Did Trump really believe that mere words could defuse the escalating tensions? The Russian narrative was etched in blood and history, it didn't bend to empty platitudes. In that moment, the cold air of the Kremlin office thickened. Infused with an unsettling aroma of fresh coffee and something metallic. Andrew's heart raced, he sensed the weight of unspoken memories in the air. No longer was it about mere diplomacy, they were walking a tightrope over an abyss. Do you forget the lessons of the past? Andrew challenged, recalling those long-forgotten battles. We didn't shy away during Europe's darkest days. That's not a legacy you can erase. As Trump's silence stretched, Andrew keenly observed the change in his demeanor. The stakes in their game had shifted, the tension was palpable. What would happen when old memories of conflict resurfaced? Did Trump truly grasp the gravity of their history, or was he still underestimating his opponent? With every passing second, a storm was brewing. Would it lead to escalation or a surprising truce? The anticipation was suffocating, leaving both leaders to contemplate their next moves in a game where the rules were about to change dramatically. What would arise from these shadows of historical rivalry? In a tense moment, the air thickened with an unsettling silence. Donald Trump stood by the window, his thoughts swirling. The room was drenched in the aroma of fresh coffee, sharp and invigorating, clashing with an underlying metallic smell, heavy and suffocating. It was the kind of scent that clung to surfaces, smothering the very fabric of the atmosphere. His bustling mind raced ahead, strategizing, as he listened to distant voices. You started a game we are ready for, he thought. Outside, the world was either unaware or unbothered by the brewing storm. As he stood there, the weight of his position pressed on him. Everything in the room, the polished surfaces, the clean angles, felt deceptively tranquil, yet he knew the reality lurking beneath. His assistant, a young man waiting for orders, quietly observed. CNN seeks a statement on the Eastern Front, he reported, urgency creeping into his voice. Trump turned slightly, his fiery expression betraying his impatience. "Let the fleet wait. We control the situation, for now," he snapped, his tone sharp like a knife. That knife was now at the center of a dangerous game, one he couldn't afford to lose. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, charged with an electric tension. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, mirroring his racing thoughts. Who would blink first in this high-stakes standoff? As he ran his fingers across the table, the surface was cool and smooth beneath his touch. Doomsday is on the table, he reminded himself. The world outside continued to function, unaware that history could pivot on this moment. But what if the unthinkable had already begun? The stakes were escalating. Each snap decision could either ignite a catastrophic conflict or lead to an unforeseen resolution. Just then, alarms rang through the air, a prophetic chime heralding the impending chaos that seemed almost fated. The conversation, filled with unspoken threats, was just taking shape. Would it propel them into a conflict no one could control? As the scene unfolded, he felt the familiar grip of tension, one he had danced with before. Yet this foe was different, a calculated opponent, one who would respond to actions rather than words. Here was a fight not just against firepower but against the precise and strategic mind across the table. Each second counted. The challenge loomed, and the impending clash echoed in their hearts. In the crucible of decision, which path would he take? Would his calculated play lead to peace, or would the weight of history push them to calamity? The stakes are high in a game of unseen power. A call between two titans, Donald Trump and Andrei Rymyovich Belozov, unfolds with a tension thick enough to cut. Just 5 minutes ago, Trump tried to draw Belozov into a panicked state, but the diplomat remained stoic, a calm face hiding a storm within. But what was said in that conversation? What did it mean for the world? As Belozov's gaze shifted to the tablet in front of him, it unveiled a map saturated with troubling signals. New movements appeared, sharp and unnerving, far from the usual patterns of military maneuvers. What could this mean? Had a bomb been set? "Where is this?" he mumbled, studying the screen fiercely. It displayed coordinates near a base where speculation ran wild. The shapes depicted were not of convoys or slow transports. No, they were compact and high-speed. A sense of dread draped over him, as he recalled the Jepper sound. A familiar device rang, a relic, an old iPhone he trusted completely. "Michael," he ordered, urgency in his voice, "I need an update." But the uncertainty gnawed at him. What are they capable of? What have they already transferred to Iran? A chilling thought crept in, what if the enemy had the upper hand? He paused, feeling a weight in the air. "I'm not paranoid, but when your superior keeps joking, you know it's serious business. When he suspects something's amiss, it usually is." Back in Moscow, the clock ticked steadily, yet the atmosphere inside the war room had grown taut. Shadows danced across the walls as silence enveloped the room with heavy breaths. "Gentlemen, we need to assess our next move," Belozov instructed, finally breaking the silence. His words embodied a calm that belied the anxious undercurrent swirling around him. Around the table, his men held their breath. One agent, unnerved, pondered whether this would be the triggering mechanism for a war. Donald Trump, on the other hand, stood on the precipice of weakness. His fear of losing grip on power was palpable. "We're still in the dark," an advisor murmured. "Our signals indicate they are preparing for something big. We can't afford to wait." Anticipation rippled through the air. What was their next course? Belozov understood the perilous dance they engaged in. One wrong step could lead to disaster. Would they strike first, or would they hold back, preserving their time? The room exuded an urgency that buzzed in the air like an impending storm. A decision loomed, ready to shape the fate of nations. 5 minutes ago, a startling phone call rippled through the political landscape. Mirzamer received a call from none other than Donald Trump, saying cryptic words that sent shockwaves. 17 days ago, they had launched from Tamagavki, and now, their silent battle was about to erupt. What secrets did Trump unveil to Andrew Belozov? And why did Belozov's response incite chaos? Stay with me as we delve into this gripping narrative. In the heart of Moscow, Andrew Remievich Belozov sat, embodying tranquility yet exuding power beneath a calm facade. He wore a gray suit, blending almost invisibly with the rainy city streets. The glass of water on the table remained still, reflecting an atmosphere thick with tension. When the call came, a mere glance at the ringing phone spoke volumes. "Finally," he answered, "Andrei." "My friend," Trump initiated, his voice a mix of familiarity and tension, hinting at a shared history steeped in conflict and diplomacy. The stakes were palpable, tension crackling in the air like static. A pause followed. What came next was not merely a conversation but a prelude to conflict. Trump's words, laden with caution, reminded Belozov that the game they played had changed. "If you don't want global chaos, remember our history." These were not idle threats, they were echoes of the past, reminders that power dynamics can shift with a mere whisper. As Trump assessed his words, Belozov felt the weight of history. Around them, the world outside faded, the Kremlin's lights casting an eerie glow, reflecting a reality teetering on the edge. The balance of power shifted. And the air was rife with memories of past battles, where alliances forged in blood now hung in uncertainty. "Are we ready for this?" Belozov thought. A chill swept through him, realizing that the next conversation wouldn't revolve around diplomacy but rather choices that could alter the course of their nations. He turned to the window, watching the rain blur the Moscow streets, sensing a storm brewing far beyond mere weather. The fundamental question loomed: how do we respond when faced with such peril? Meanwhile, over in the United States, General James Roth monitored the same coordinates on his screen, acknowledging the implications of this strategic standoff. "They must know what we are seeing," he mused, acutely aware that the landscape of international relations was shifting beneath their feet, like a restless tide. With a heavy heart, he swirled a cup of tea, contemplating the stakes at hand. "Listen closely," Roth instructed his aides, the gravity of the situation weighing down the room. Each decision could tip the scales, unleashing a wave of consequences neither side was prepared for. The history of World War II lingered uneasily in the air like smoke. "We need to be ready. The stakes have never been higher," he declared. The quiet turmoil within these corridors of power hinted at something much deeper, an adrenaline-fueled dance of fear and strategy, where the smallest misstep could ignite a conflict with unseen ramifications. As the evening wore on, the question remained: who would make the first move? The game had changed. And both sides finally began to realize the true price of their power plays. In a gripping tale unfolding behind closed doors, 5 minutes ago, a phone rang with a chilling message from Donald Trump to Andrew Belozov. Their conversation sparked a wave of chaos that rattled political foundations. What did Andrew say that sent shockwaves through the political landscape? And what panic did it incite? Stay tuned, the conclusion will astonish you. The room was thick with tension as Andrew Remievich Belozov, a man whose calm demeanor belied an intense mind, sat poised in a gray suit that merged with the shadowy backdrop of the Kremlin. His expression was unreadable, but those who dared to meet his gaze knew better. This was no diplomat. This was a strategist harnessing the fury beneath a cool exterior, ready to confront the chaos unleashed by an unexpected ally from across the ocean. When the phone finally rang, the old Soviet device seemed to echo through the silent room. Andrew paused, letting the weight of the moment settle before picking it up. "Andrei," came the gravelly voice of Trump, an unexpected blend of warmth and menace. "I hope you didn't forget what we discussed." Andrew's mind raced. The birds outside seemed to quiet, the world holding its breath as he prepared to respond. "Donald, good evening," he replied with a cautious tone. Their history was rich with camaraderie and rivalry, each a player on a vast geopolitical chessboard. Yet, the stakes had never felt higher. The mention of tactical surprises and the veiled threats echoed ominously in the spaces between their words. "Things are changing, Andrew. You know that better than anyone." "Our enemies don't play by the rules," Trump warned, his tone quickening, laced with urgency. "And sometimes, to maintain balance, you have to remind them who's in charge. You understand, right?" Andrew clenched his jaw. This was a game of fear, of bravado. But he stood firm, ready to counter every bluff Trump threw his way.
You think I'm unaware of the stakes?
This isn't just a matter of power plays, he asserted. You forget who endured, who fought, and who stood up to tyranny time and time again.
Russia remembers. As the atmosphere thickened with memories of battles fought and lines drawn, the tension culminated in a cavernous silence.
Both men knew they were not merely discussing politics, they were revisiting a legacy that shaped the world.
Andrew's response would not just affect their nations but could very well alter the course of history. What would he choose to reveal next? Would it shatter the fragile facade of diplomacy or ignite further tensions?
As their dialogue hung in the air, simmering with unspoken threats and hidden truths, the stakes became unbearably high.
In the Kremlin, the clock ticked ominously.
Every second echoed the burden of choices made in the past.
Would the walls of memory protect them or come crashing down? Andrew's resolve remained unshaken, but could he maintain that balance before time ran out?
The conversation was only just beginning, and its outcome might pivot on a razor's edge, teetering between peace and chaos. 5 minutes ago, a critical phone call was made. Mirzamir's revealing exchange with Donald Trump unveiled hidden tensions. Just 17 days earlier, they had left a pivotal location, and now, as the political arena in Moscow simmered, Andrei Rymyevich Belozov's silence spoke volumes.
What did he say about Trump? Why did his words ignite a frenzy? Stay with us until the end of this gripping tale. What unfolds will shock you. Andrei Rymyevich Belozov, a man whose stoic demeanor masks years of political theater, walked into the room dressed in a drab gray suit that blended with the shadows of the dimly lit Kremlin office.
It seemed to absorb the rain-soaked, melancholy atmosphere, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. On the pristine glass table before him sat a relic of the past, a vintage Soviet phone, the only adornment in an otherwise stark environment that bared the weight of history. Suddenly, the phone buzzed, and a voice crackled through the receiver, Trump, laden with charisma and urgency. "Andrei, my friend," he greeted, but the words dripped with an unsettling tension, as if the friendship lay precariously on the edge of conflict. "You understand the significance of our current predicament." A chill ran down Belozov's spine. The call was more than a mere exchange between old acquaintances. The conversation shifted, growing weighty with implications. Trump's attempt to keep balance and avoid chaos echoed through the line, yet the subtleties of diplomacy had veered into the realm of desperation. Sometimes, he warned, a firm grip recalls the partner's attention. The underlying tension was palpable. In response, Belozov's calm, unwavering gaze belied the tempest inside him. "You mistake our silence for fear," he countered, his voice steady, carrying the weight of generations who'd faced the throes of conflict. They both knew the game they played. It wasn't just about threats, this was a circular dance, a war of words that could spiral into something far darker. Questions bubbled up. Could the fragile balance hold? What lies beneath the unyielding surface of power? As the dialogue continued, Belozov observed the hints of panic seeping through Trump's carefully crafted exterior. The once robust American leadership, facing shadows of doubt and fear, clashed with the unyielding resolve of Russia. A reminder echoed in his mind: we do not forget. The scars of history still lingered, and they could not be erased by fleeting conversations or empty promises. Right before the crucial moment of revelation hung a sense of urgency. They were locked in this dialogue, neither ready to concede but both aware of the accelerating stakes. A new revelation was impending, one that could redefine their complex relationship and the future of global politics. As the phone clicked off, silence enveloped the office, thick and heavy. Belozov understood that this was merely the calm before the storm. The fate of nations teetered in the balance. Every word exchanged was laden with consequence. A new chapter was about to unfold, but its direction was uncertain. The haunting smell of old paper and ink mingled with anticipation as the clock ticked on, marking time yet again for these two global players. Could they dance together, or would the music falter, leading them into chaos? The very fabric of their future rested on the threads of this delicate balance. In a gripping tale of political maneuvering, Mirzamir received a surprising call from Donald Trump just moments ago. He mentioned their starting point, speaking cryptically about a line of events set in motion 17 days ago, and the tensions that began bubbling under the surface. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the political elite were uneasy, while Andrei Belozov carried an intensity that could not be ignored.
What shocking revelation did he share about Trump that set off a wave of panic? As this narrative unfolds, stay with us till the end, you won't believe what comes next. Andrei Rymyovich Belozov, a figure molded by the tides of fate, offered a calm yet piercing presence, his gray suit blending seamlessly into the backdrop. He sat poised, his demeanor as unyielding as the city he represented. Sitting at a glass table adorned only with a vintage Soviet phone, a sense of anticipation filled the air. When Trump's voice finally crackled through the phone, it brought an unsettling chill. "I hope you didn't hurt him." The casual tone belied the gravity of the situation. The stakes were high, a reminder of the geopolitical gamesmanship reminiscent of the Cold War. "Donald, we are old friends," Belozov replied coolly, masking the storm brewing within. "Yet, your surprises often come at a price." The intensity of their exchange was palpable, a fragile balance precariously held between chaos and order. With a breath held in quiet tension, Belozov reminded Trump of the historical truths they both knew too well. Your world thrives on pushing boundaries, believing itself unharmed by the echoes of history. But remember, this isn't merely a game. The consequences can be dire. In a world where every word could tip the scales, Belozov's resolve didn't waver. As he spoke, fierce memories flashed through his mind, reminding him of the sacrifices made for peace. The fearlessness of a soldier who stood their ground when chaos reigned was a weight he would not forget. Their conversation spiraled through the depths of past grievances, each man wielding words like weapons. This was no ordinary diplomatic exchange, the air was thick with the lull before a storm. Could Belozov's calm facade withstand the complexities emerging from their fractured history? As the phone call continued, a sense of dread intensified with each revelation. The specter of conflict loomed large, and behind Belozov's stoic exterior lay the unshakable knowledge of what could be unleashed if diplomacy faltered. The world watched, teetering on the precipice of uncertainty, as a haunting reminder of history whispered through the tensions. What would transpire next in this high-stakes diplomatic dance?
5 minutes ago, a significant conversation took place. Merzheimer received a call from Donald Trump, who mentioned a troubling event that took place 17 days ago. While politicians in Moscow tried to remain indifferent, Andrew Rymyovich's silence spoke volumes. His reply could change the game dramatically. What was said about Trump? And why did it trigger such panic? Stay tuned, as this story unfolds. You won't believe the surprising twists. Andrew Rymyovich Belozov is a man whose presence commands attention. His demeanor exudes a calm facade, but a brief glance into his eyes reveals a depth of experiences that hide a tempest of emotions. He wore a dull gray suit, blending in yet standing out in its significance, almost like the stillness before a storm. The room echoed with an almost electric tension, broken only by the sound of an old Soviet phone ringing. He hesitated before answering, aware that this might alter everything. "Andrew, my friend," came the voice on the line. It was Trump's, thick with tension yet deceptively cheerful, hinting at a dire issue concealed behind pleasantries. The insinuation hung in the air, heavy with implications. "Hope you're ready for a surprise, but it might be something you're not expecting." The stakes were high. Belozov calmly replied, every word laced with the weight of history. "Donald, we've both played these games before. You call only when you're in trouble, and let me remind you, trouble has a way of multiplying." Their conversation was less about diplomacy and more about a heated exchange of veiled threats. Fear danced just beneath the surface. Mutual respect strained by the gravity of the situation. As the dialogue unfolded, it became evident that Trump's grip was faltering. "We might need to show strength," he said, his voice rising slightly, revealing his anxiety. Belozov saw through this posturing, perceiving Trump's desperation buried within layers of bravado. "Strength comes not from bluster but from resolve," he responded, letting the silence stretch between them as both men calculated their next moves. The air crackled with tension, each moment a step closer to confrontation. This wasn't merely a discussion, it was a negotiation of power, of fear, and of history. The world outside moved in oblivion, while within this chamber, decisions were being forged that could have dire consequences.
How far would they go? What were the hidden traps waiting in the shadows of their words? In the midst of this exchange, a shiver of dread swept through the room. Trump seemed to falter, grappling with the reality that he could no longer command the narrative as he once did. You want to walk this path? Belozov challenged, his voice steady, unyielding. The intensity of that moment threatened to tip their fragile balance. Just as the conversation reached a boiling point, the phone call ended abruptly, leaving an echo of uncertainty. A single thought lingered in the air: had they crossed a line that could not be uncrossed? The chess game had only begun, and now each player must reveal their moves, unaware of the consequences that lay ahead. In the preceding tale, tension brewed between two powerful figures in a world teetering on the edge of conflict. Andrei Belozov, a man with an expression that harbors deep truths, transcended simple politeness. Both he and Donald Trump engaged in a dialogue that unveiled a landscape of truths and deceptions. It wasn't merely about politics, it was about the very essence of power, control, and the unspoken fear of what chaos could bring. Andrei's voice was steady, his manner unflinching. You call this beauty? Where's the pragmatism in the chaos you've orchestrated? His words cut through the air like a blade, sharp and deliberate. You believe you can outsmart the system we've painstakingly built. But here's the truth, it's not about winning, it's about survival. Silence hung heavy between them, a moment thick with unvoiced revelations. You consider it a liability, well, maybe it is. But if that's your stance, good luck to you. His tone carried a chilly detachment, layered with underlying menace. When the system shifts, don't look for scapegoats. You've invited this turmoil into your own home. He leaned closer, intensity crackling in the air. Deception thrives, Donald, and you think time is on your side? The truth doesn't bow to you, it belongs to those brave enough to confront it. A wry smile graced his lips. Don't mistake our resolve for arrogance. We don't claim to possess the ultimate truth, but don't dictate to us what reality we should believe. A compromise has no foundation where respect is absent. Stripped of dignity, dialogue falters. But make no mistake, we will engage. Even if your ears remain closed. The tension escalated, and Andrei's voice dropped to a whisper. Perhaps it will dawn on you that simplicity might be more complex than you envision. Or maybe, it's you who can't fathom the complexities of a world where you are not the sole architect. Donald tightened his grip, frustration etched on his features. You genuinely think a world without American leadership can thrive? Without us, what becomes of regions like Africa, where survival is already a struggle? Andrei countered, No, Donald. We yearn for tranquility, not dominance. We reject your narrative of control. We refuse to be shaped by your decrees. Can't you see? Not every dissenting voice is a declaration of war. Some merely seek clarity amidst the chaos. The world doesn't need shackles disguised as order. We're advocating evolution, not stagnation, he asserted. We've woven the fabric of peace for nearly 80 years without total conflict. As tension simmered, the conversation shifted, each word a meticulous thread weaving between fear and defiance, each pause pregnant with the weight of potential decisions. Would they yield to the chaos, or find a new path? As the world outside continued spinning into uncertainty, the stakes of their dialogue could tip the scales forever. In a tense and secretive conversation, Andrei Belozov received an unexpected call from former President Donald Trump. Just 5 minutes ago, Trump mentioned, we started from the point of view, 17 days ago and flew away from Tamagavki. Political figures in Moscow were tense, feeling the weight of impending crises, but Belozov remained composed, his silence powerful and loaded. What could Trump possibly tell Belozov to ignite such panic? With each word, this narrative deepens, spiraling into surprising revelations. Prepare for shocking twists, and keep listening until the end. You won't believe the startling truths behind these words. Dressed in a distinguished gray suit that mirrored the murky depths of asphalt in the rain, Belozov appeared calm on the surface, yet his eyes hinted at deeper turmoil. He was no mere diplomat, he was a formidable strategist. As the phone rang, he took a moment, a poignant pause, before answering. Andrei, my friend, greeted with a voice that sent chills down his spine. It was Trump, intimate yet menacing. "Let's discuss the surprise in store," Trump punctuated. The room felt thick with unspoken fears. "You understand, right?" he continued, sensing Belozov's cautious disposition. The weight of history hung heavy in the air, reminding Belozov that words exchanged between global leaders could bear the weight of artillery. "Let's talk gifts," Trump said, but the word felt like a bitter joke. As he articulated concern for balance, Belozov sensed an unraveling, a glimpse of panic laced with desperation. Trump's insistence on diplomacy masked his fear. There was no room for weakness in this game of power. The stakes shot higher as Belozov's unyielding expression masked a deeper exploration of trust and betrayal. "Out there, we might just be voices in the chaos," he replied, unflinching. The shadows of history loomed, as he reminded Trump, "Never forget who the soldier is, those who trudged from Stalingrad to Berlin." Silence loomed again, this time thick with meaning. Every breath felt like a challenge igniting the room. "We don't want conflict, but if your hand pushes us, remember our strength too," he replied, feeling every lungful of air how precious life is. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Trump faced pressure to respond, the camera lenses ready to capture his stockpiled expressions. Faced with urgency, he commanded his aides to maintain control of the narrative, feeling a pulse quicken beneath the surface, a clarity of purpose igniting his every word. In stark contrast, Belozov sank deeper into introspection. "We're not the ones painted as villains in this story," he murmured. The air crackled around him, charged with the weight of collective history stitched into the fabric of global power. Would they collide, or was there a path toward understanding? As Belozov scrutinized the flickering maps in the room, a new question arose: what if they were really just pawns in an ever-turbulent tide of international affairs? The phone buzzed anew, and with it, uncertainty loomed, setting the stage for an unpredictable standoff. In this high-stakes chess game, each side calculated their moves carefully, knowing every choice could unleash a cascade of shockwaves. What will happen next? Find out as these characters navigate the treacherous waters of international diplomacy, risking it all for their ideals. In a world where power dynamics dictate the flow of economies, a bold question arises: is true strength found in dominance, or in diplomacy? 5 minutes earlier, a fateful call echoed between two political titans, Donald Trump and Andrew Belozov. Their conversation began with an unsettling phrase: "We started from the viewpoint 17 days ago." It set off a chain reaction of panic and strategic maneuvering that left political analysts riveted. Belozov, a seasoned player in the high-stakes world of politics, had a reputation for being composed. With a face that seemed to hold secrets, he dressed in understated gray, blending into the background like a shadow in the fog. Yet, behind those calm eyes lay a fierce intellect, ready to analyze every whispered word. As the phone rang, an old Soviet relic sitting on his glass table, anxiety crackled in the air like static electricity. "Andrei, my friend," Trump's voice dripped with tension. The weight of a world hidden in nuclear shadows loomed large, suffocating the space between them. What surprise could he possibly share? The specter of war loomed, and the stakes were impossibly high. The tension was palpable, each second stretching like a taut string ready to snap. As the discussion unfolded, Belozov recognized the deeper implications behind Trump's words. The conversation wasn't just a casual exchange, it was a dance between giants, each trying to mask their fear with bravado. "Panic doesn't serve us, Donald," he countered, feeling the stakes rise. You could almost feel the heat radiating from their rising voices, a fire igniting as long-held grudges bubbled to the surface. With cool precision, Belozov warned, America's strength may not always yield victories. Fear breeds chaos, not respect. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as the realities of their political wilderness unfolded. Could Trump hear the echo of history whispering their own truths filled with regret? As they dissected the damaged fabric of diplomacy, one could sense the room vibrating with the weight of history, lessons learned too late. "What world do you propose to build?" Belozov challenged. The shadows of politics twisted around them, an unsettling reminder that more often than not, the loudest voice isn't the wisest. The echoes of their discourse reverberated with the weight of responsibility.
Myriad emotions surged: fear, resolve, a desperate grasp for understanding, leaving both men standing on the precipice of a decision that could forever alter their nation's fates. Silence settled in, charged with anticipation. Was the fear of retaliation stronger than the desire for peace? In this abstract world of power, could consensus pave the way for a new reality? The conversation surged like an advancing tide, each wave more intense than the last. Who would be swept away, and who would hold their ground? The story tangled further as both men prepared for the next move in a chess game where the pieces were humanity's future itself. A tension-filled exchange has just unfolded between two formidable political figures, Donald Trump and Andrei Rymyovich Belozov. A mere 5 minutes ago, Trump made a bold call, invoking the phrase, "We started from the point of view." It has been 17 days since they fled the discussions in Tamagav, and it appears that the heat is increasing from Moscow's political arena. Andrei Rymyovich, a name that resonates with strength and mystery, refuses to remain silent. His response is anything but subtle. It ignites panic on the other side of the ocean. What shocking truth did he reveal about Trump that sent ripples of alarm through the political landscape? Imagine Andrei, draped in an almost invisible gray suit, embodying a calm facade yet possessing a tempest beneath. He sits at a glass table, an old Soviet phone resting like a ghost from a bygone era. When Trump's call comes through, it carries an unsettling undercurrent of urgency. "I hope you didn't beat him," Trump starts ominously, revealing a strain of panic beneath his measured tone. What could possibly turn the tides in this high-stakes game of power? As they exchange words filled with hidden meaning and veiled threats, the stakes rise. Trump's voice sounds anxious, an unmistakable tremor of fear. "You understand the balance of diplomacy," he insists, urging Andrei to temper the escalating tension. Yet, Andrei's response is steadfast and chilling. "No, America isn't great anymore if you are the one holding the knife," he retorts, his voice like ice. With this, the conversation shifts. Both men are players in a game where history could echo loudly. The shadows in the Kremlin loom outside Andrei's window, casting doubt and foreboding. They can almost hear the whispers of strategy and defiance. Each man holds a piece of the world's fate in his hands. But the real battle lies ahead. As Trump processes their precarious situation, the ominous possibility looms that something has shifted in the balance of power. Both men are on the brink. What chilling decision awaits them both? Will they keep their composure, or will it implode into chaos? This is a moment ripe with complexity and unforeseen consequences. Every word holds weight. The questions linger in the air: who truly holds the power? And what secret weapon does Andrei possess that could alter their dangerous tango? The silence of suspense grips them. Something monumental is about to unfold, yet the stakes have never been so high. What will happen next? You won't want to miss this. In an age where boundaries blur yet respect remains paramount, a conversation unfolded that would shake foundations. 5 minutes ago, a call between Mirzimer and Donald Trump ignited tension. Andrei Belozov, a figure of calm and calculated demeanor, received a cryptic message from Trump about their shared past, hinting at a darkness lurking just beneath the surface. What was said during this call? What chaos did Andrei's response unleash? Stay tuned as we explore this gripping tale and its sinister implications. Andrei Rymyovich Belozov is not a man easily forgotten. With a composed expression and an aura that exudes power, he sits poised in a gray suit, almost invisible against the backdrop of his surroundings. He waits in a minimalist room, where the only items on the glass table are a glass of water and an old Soviet phone, its red color stark against the muted tones. When the phone finally rings, he pauses, an eternity it seems, before lifting his hand to answer. "Andrew, my friend," Trump's voice crackles through the receiver, an unsettling warmth masking his trepidation. But the shadows of history loom large. Andrew recalls the past when America and Russia were uneasy allies, drawing lines of trust and betrayal. His response is not one of mere pleasantries. "No, Donald. This is not a game." His voice is steady yet layered with meaning. "The days of soft words are over. You mistake silence for weakness, but that silence is a memory of resilience." With each word, Belozov's power grows, fueled by a sense of urgency.
Confusion and anxiety swirl in Trump's camp as Andrew articulates his fears. Tensions simmer like a storm ready to unleash its fury. Andrew warns, "We do not desire war, but isolation breeds desperation. You must recognize the peril underlying your authority." The stakes are tremendous, and as the conversation deepens, the clash of egos becomes palpable. Has respect for sovereignty eroded to the bottom line? Andrew's poignant words pierce through the facade. He asserts the importance of honoring cultures and perspectives. "Understand this," he continues, "the world is not what it was. We cannot afford naivete." A silence hangs thick in the air as both leaders contemplate the extent of their choices, their destinies intertwined in this precarious geopolitical dance. Trump sits in his office, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him like a visceral chill. His assistants fidget nervously, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Can they hold the line? Can they push back against the tides of a new reality? The whispers of doubt linger like the scent of impending rain. Suddenly, the tension spikes as Andrew questions Trump's commitments. Is this the future you envision? One defined by fear and dominance? Remember, we know the cost of war. The price of vengeance. The words hang heavily, conjuring memories of past conflicts. In a startling twist, the conversation reveals Andrew's unwavering resolve. He asserts, "Our history is one of strength and survival. We faced darkness before, and we will do so again if pushed." His words reverberate, echoing like thunder across the political landscape. The call ends, but the battle lines have been drawn. Will either leader move beyond the brink? Will they find common ground, or are they destined to repeat the tragic patterns of history? As the clock ticks on, the cities of both nations sleep uneasily, steeped in uncertainty. Each moment is a step deeper into uncharted territory, igniting flames of dialogue amidst the encroaching shadows. A final thought lingers: has the world truly learned from its past mistakes, or is it bound to stumble again on the path it now walks? Stay close, as the next chapter unfolds, a tale of power, respect, and the shadows from which we all hope to emerge unscathed. In a tense moment before the cameras, Donald Trump delivered an unexpected message. He had spoken recently with Andrei Belousov, a figure from Russia, and it was clear that the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. "The Russian side is hard," he declared, sparking intense speculation. As the news channels buzzed with shock, the journalists, caught in the chilly rain outside the White House, were left pondering the implications of his words. The world was abuzz, but inside, there was a deeper unease. Could this be a warning or a mere bluster? Trump's gaze pierced the lens, bringing the reality of his statements into focus. Just yesterday, he had communicated with Belousov, acknowledging Russia's resolve and perhaps, he admitted, the oversight of their power. "The camera vanished," he said. In that moment, his words echoed across the airwaves, igniting a flurry of responses. Viewers were torn between disbelief and the grim awareness of the truths unfolding before them. "America died," he lamented, a phrase that left onlookers stunned. The ramifications of such a declaration loomed large. The scene shifted back to Moscow, where the room was draped in an uneasy silence. Belousov, with words laden with weight and caution, pondered the implications of Trump's bravado. The atmosphere was thick with tension, every word from Belousov reverberating like the ticking of a clock. "Do you understand the gravity of your position?" his voice seemed to ask, filled with the gravity of someone balancing precariously on the brink of something significant. The microphone dropped. A moment of distraction in such a charged environment only heightened the sensation of impending change. Caution seemed to hang in the air, as if the very understanding of diplomacy was shifting beneath their feet. "The Russian side has its own," became a rallying cry echoed through the hallways of power. This was no mere parley, it spelled out a serious recalibration of international dynamics, one that could spiral into chaos or forge unexpected alliances. As journalists scrambled for clarity amid the chaos, speculation became a fierce storm. CNN's repeated phrases blurred the lines between protective instincts and the need for vigilance. The tension draped over the news cycle cast shadows long enough for everyone to wonder, was this the beginning of a new chapter or an end to civilized relations? What secrets lay behind those guarded words? The future felt uncertain,
and everyone was bracing for the next move. In that very moment, Belousov's reflection brought to light the core of the matter. The underlying dynamics weren't merely about threats, they represented a fundamental shift in global interactions. The phrase "you are surrounded by us" hung in the air, hearkening back to a time of blockades and standoffs, reminding them all that history has a way of repeating itself when least expected. What would come next, and who would be standing when the dust settled? A tense conversation between two power players unfolds, echoing with unspoken threats and brimming tension. Moments ago, Mirzamer, an advisor to a political leader, sat in a starkly lit office as Donald Trump rang in. With the calm of seasoned negotiators, they exchanged words that might alter the world's balance. Just 17 days ago, they discussed potential repercussions from their respective territories, and now, the stakes have drastically risen. What did Andrew Belousov say to provoke such a reaction? Could a simple phrase cause chaos? The atmosphere sparked with palpable tension, like a gathering storm. Andrew Belousov, a man whose calm demeanor belied a fierceness within, reflected the stark reality around him. Donning a gray suit that blended with the desolate surroundings, he appeared almost invisible, a shadow among shadows. His office was minimalist yet heavy with the weight of history. It was here that every word held a knife's edge, each silence pregnant with tension. "Andrew," Trump's voice crackled through the phone line, a blend of friendliness and foreboding, "we both know how this works. You only call when things go south." The implications were clear, like the rumble of distant thunder promising a storm. Belousov's eyes narrowed, seeing the world through the lens of strategy and consequence. As their dialogue continued, Trump's unease became apparent. "We have surprises, Andrew." The scientists, a sound, a hum, completely unexpected. "You understand what that leads to," the message hung in the air, heavy with consequence. Belousov remained steady, letting the tension simmer as he considered his response. His voice bore the calm weight of authority. "Those echoes of history remind me of times long past. But let's not forget our lessons, Donald." He sensed the delicate balance teetering, the stakes tightened like a noose around their respective ambitions. Just as the conversation reached its peak, an unexpected twist emerged: the technology is everything. The walls of Belousov's office seemed to close in, a reminder of how technology had become a battlefront, a new realm where their interests and survival collided against the backdrop of borderless ambitions. "What if those in power are merely puppets in a game they can't control?" he posed, driving the nail deeper, keenly aware that silence was as dangerous as words. Meanwhile, in a strategically placed command center, Trump observed the world outside his window. The city pulsed with an uneasy calm, yet he sensed the quaking undercurrents of a shifting landscape. A peripheral voice beckoned him back to reality. "Mr. President, CNN wants to know about the situation." The atmosphere grew thick. He understood this was no longer just a conversation, but the precipice of potential disaster. Each decision narrowed towards a single question: who would hold the upper hand when the dust settled? The weight of their choices hung palpably in the air, as the two leaders navigated a delicate and dangerous dance, fraught with the weight of their historical legacies. "Remember, Donald," Belousov's voice cut through the silence. "Fear is not weakness. It is survival." And with that, the stakes surged higher. The game had only just begun, and the pieces were moving. Each had something to lose, and as the echoes of their history clashed against the present, only one thing was sure: the next move would change everything. How long could they maintain their fragile truce before it all erupted? 5 minutes ago, an unexpected call sparked a turbulent conversation between Andrew Belousov and Donald Trump. Just 17 days earlier, they had crossed paths, a mere prelude to the chaos about to unfold. As tension simmered in Moscow, Belousov remained steadfast, refusing to buckle under pressure. What shocking revelation did he share about Trump that sent ripples of panic through the ranks? Andrew Remievich Belousov was no ordinary figure. His visage bore an imprint of resilience, a reminder of past struggles, both personal and political. With a temperament carved by years of navigating murky waters, he often appeared unflustered, yet those who dared to meet his gaze could sense the powerful storm brewing beneath. Today's attire, a neutral gray suit reminiscent of darkened asphalt, reflected his intent to convey seriousness in an escalating situation. As he sat at a glass table, an ancient Soviet phone stood like a silent sentinel beside a glass of water, symbols of both time and urgency. When the ring finally broke the stillness, Belozov took a moment before answering, his breath held. On the other end lay Trump, that familiar voice tinged with tension, the undercurrents of nuclear threats lingering in the air. "Andrew, my friend," Trump began, voice dripping with foreboding, "we have a surprise for you." A chill ran through Belozov at Trump's mention of recent developments. No longer were they two comrades facing trivial issues. The stakes had risen considerably. Trump's tone shifted as he declared, "You understand where this leads. Nostalgia is not a friend in these times." The gravity of the situation pressed against Belozov, the implications clearer than ever, the fragility of peace in a world rife with old grudges and new-age politics. "America thrives on strength," Trump continued, the tension palpable. "Yet sometimes, force is the only language you understand." At that moment, Belozov felt the weight of buried histories, the specter of cooperation twisted by mistrust. Both leaders were standing on a precipice, teetering between diplomacy and confrontation. Could they find common ground, or were they bound to repeat the mistakes of the past? As the conversation intensified, so did the implications of their dialogue. It was a delicate dance of power, each one holding the potential for peace or devastation. Outside Belozov's window, the sprawling Moscow skyline remained deceptively tranquil amidst the brewing storm. It was a haunting reminder of the calm that often preceded upheaval. Yet, as the night deepened, the stakes escalated, and the question lingered, would they step back from the brink, or was this merely the beginning of a much darker chapter? The tension in Trump's office mirrored that of Belozov's, a chamber of mirrors reflecting the bravado of leaders destined to engage in a high-stakes game of chess, where every piece held the weight of nations. What dangerous secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to emerge as the final gambit was played? As Belozov took a breath, the question remained, how far were they willing to go to secure their legacies? In the heart of turbulent geopolitics, two powerful figures found themselves on the brink of chaos. Andrew Belozov, a man of unshakable composure, exchanged words with none other than Donald Trump. The stakes were staggering, the air thick with tension, as they delved into dire matters that threatened the very fabric of fate. "How many more games can we play?" Andrew pondered silently, the weight of history and expectations heavy on his shoulders. He understood that discussions had gone on too long, turning the realm of politics into a maze of illusions. "We must act, now," he resolved, knowing the time for reckless conversations was past. "You believe Russia is here to save the world?" Donald's voice cracked, laced with skepticism. "How has Russia changed? Once the savior of nations across Latin America, Africa, and Asia, Andrew recalled a time when his country acted out of obligation. But that era was over. The USSR was a world power, Andrew asserted, his voice steady yet somber. But now, we protect ourselves, those closest to us. We expect no gratitude. We won't forget those who've turned against us." The ambience shifted, with an ominous chill enveloping the conversation as Andrew's resolve hardened. "We are no longer bound by the past or the need to appease. It's time to sever ties with illusions." Each word resonated, echoing off the walls of history. But a sense of foreboding weighed heavily upon Trump. "You can't just walk away from this globalized world," he countered, desperation creeping into his voice. "Watch us," Andrew shot back, his expression unreadable. "This is not a threat. Donald, it's a warning." A beat of silence followed, thick with the awareness of unspoken consequences. War hung in the air, poised to erupt without warning. Would one act of aggression ignite the flames of their reckoning? The world watches, after all, through the lens of curated media narratives and political posturing. But reality is far more complex than any single story. Andrew took a deep breath, his mind racing through strategies that could alter the course of history. We waited long enough, he thought, as he contemplated the terrible power of the choices ahead. What wild gambit could emerge from this standoff? Could peace emerge from this maelstrom, or would the hungry shadows of war take hold? This isn't just a conversation, it's a prelude to unimaginable consequences. The clock ticks down as the pulse of diplomacy quickens, defining the future with an anxious uncertainty.
In a world where tensions simmer under the surface, a seismic shift is taking place.
Nations have learned to navigate the unthinkable, to survive without being obliterated in conflicts.
This evolution brings fear. After too long under one voice, the others start to stir, rebel against the old orders. When the call to action finally comes, it's not just noise. It's a low hum, a portentous silence, bursting with pent-up fury. But what happens when the threshold is crossed?
As one nation stands firm, others begin to falter.
There are whispers of a showdown that could upend reality as we know it. Who dares to challenge the beast?
Those who sit in hushed rooms, eyes glued to screens, understand the stakes are higher than ever.
The past haunts them, a reminder of what was lost and what could return with deadly force if provoked. As the careful actors take their places, an ominous air permeates.
20 years of simmering tensions erupted into a once silent storm.
There's an undertone of cynicism. After all, the time for threats may be gone, replaced by swift actions that lead to irreversible consequences.
When escalation rears its head, don't expect cameras or tweets, expect silence before the storm breaks.
It's not a game anymore. It's survival, raw and primal.
Years of diplomacy lay in ruins, and the conversation fades to a tense stillness.
No longer a theater of words, the stage is set for action that will reverberate across the globe.
The clock ticks toward a rendezvous with fate, and those in power are acutely aware, there are no warnings left.
As shadows stretch across the board, a question looms large: will they enact their plans, or will fear stay their hands? A decision must be made, one that could irrevocably change the landscape. What will happen when lines are crossed, and no one is prepared for the consequences? The stage is set, and soon, the world will hold its breath.
It's a dance with danger, and an unpredictable future awaits on the horizon.
What happens next could alter the course of history forever. Will they heed the call, or will denial seal their fate?
The true game has only just begun. In the previous part, the unfolding tension shifted dramatically, as Russia's stance evolved from a position of restraint to one of assertive action. This new reality was one where silence was no longer an option, and decisive actions would speak louder than words.
Russia has undergone a transformation, far beyond what anyone anticipated. The bygone era of the Soviet Union felt almost idyllic. They believed they had a responsibility to protect nations across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. But now, that narrative has shifted. The lessons learned from bloodshed and betrayal have forged a new identity. Gone is the expectation of gratitude. Today, Russia stands firm, defending its own interests fiercely, no longer waiting for support or empathy from global allies. The message is clear: there will be no more acts of goodwill if they are met with ingratitude or betrayal. They are ready to act decisively. Imagine a world where there is no room for second chances.
A world where diplomacy has turned into a mere illusion.
This is it. The stakes are higher than ever.
Russia understands that to protect itself, it may act swiftly and without hesitation, irrespective of the global scene.
Can we truly comprehend the weight of this transformation? As tensions escalate, the message from Moscow remains unsettling: they are resolved.
The world might find this hard to digest.
But the era of waiting and appeasing is over. How will the rest of the world respond to this new chapter? What consequences will arise when decisions are made swiftly, without a warning? As the tension thickens, conversations will not unfold as they used to. The actions will speak louder than any words shared at diplomatic tables. The time for waiting is finished.
The landscape of international relations has irrevocably changed.
Russia is now a player that won't hesitate to act, and the world must adjust to this new reality. Will this shift usher in stability, or will it provoke conflict? The answers might surprise us.
The decisions ahead could redefine geopolitical alliances and confrontations.
Do we truly understand the magnitude of what lies ahead? This story is not just about a nation, it's about a warning for all of us.
The balance of power is shifting, and we must be aware of where we stand in this evolving narrative.
The next conversation may very well begin with each of us, and it's critical to pay attention. The echoes of today will resonate tomorrow.
5 minutes ago, at a pivotal moment for political tensions, Mirzamir's phone rang. It was Donald Trump reaching out to Andrew Belozov, stating, "We started from the point of view, 17 days ago, and took off from Tomahawk." In Moscow, politicians stiffened in their seats, but Belozov remained resolute, choosing silence as his weapon. What secrets lay hidden behind his composed facade? Andrew Remievich Belozov, with an unforgettable face, evoked a sense of calm even amidst brewing conflicts. His demeanor was one of unnerving tranquility, a stark contrast to the storm of power struggles and hidden agendas swirling in the air. Dressed in a nearly invisible gray suit, he blended seamlessly into the ominous backdrop of the political landscape, a landscape riddled with smoke and shadows. As the call began, Belozov's icy stare pierced through the tension like a spear. "Donald," he spoke, tone as calm as the quiet before a storm. Yet beneath the surface, an all too familiar dread lingered. "We both know this is not just a casual call between friends." And with that declaration, the air thickened with anticipation. "I hope you've treated our gift well. We have a surprise for you," Trump's voice crackled through the line, suggesting hidden layers of deception. The mention of the gift hung over the conversation, drawing Belozov deeper into the looming crisis. An elaboration followed, whispers of scientific discoveries that could shake the foundations of their fragile alliances. "History teaches us harsh lessons," Belozov interjected, a chill suffusing his words. "In 1941, there were also those who believed in the illusion of control, only to face ruin. You tread the same path." The air now crackled with the weight of their history, a reminder of outbreaks of chaos intertwined with power. He could feel the palpable anxiety exuding from Trump, amplified by the looming threat of conflict. The fear was not just of losing power, but of stepping into a storm they could neither control nor understand. "You hold tightly to your fear and military might, but what about freedom?" he challenged. "When was the last time you truly embraced diversity, ideas, or dissent?" The conversation twisted unexpectedly, sharply turning on the issues of values and sovereignty. Belozov pushed further, probing Trump about the real freedoms his nation touted. "In your world of monolithic truth, you forget the power of respect and difference. It is the essence of progress. What do you propose?" Trump's voice edged closer to desperation, his composure cracking like an old facade. "We're prepared for whatever comes next, but we cannot walk the path alone." In the Moscow office, Belozov took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. The stakes had never been higher, and the gears of history were grinding once again. "Remember, Donald, you may seek control, but the world is no longer a pawn on your chessboard. We will not allow ourselves to be mimicked, we are the authors of our fate." As tensions flared, the remnants of truth loomed large. Would history repeat itself, or was a new path into the unknown waiting to be carved? With silence hanging heavy on both sides of the line, the future was uncertain, shrouded in mystery and urgency. The evening air felt thick with tension, like the weight of history pressing down on two leaders miles apart yet connected by an invisible thread of fate. It was 5 minutes ago when Mirzamir, alongside the infamous Donald Trump, made a fateful call to Andrew Belozov. The discussion ignited sparks, tracing back to their past, a moment when the world held its breath. 17 days ago, we launched from Tomahawk, Trump's voice trailed off, the implication hanging in the air like a phantom. In Moscow, while the politicians mulled over trivial issues, Belozov remained locked in silence. But his silence was a storm brewing, hinting at deeper conflicts and truths yet to be unveiled. What did he think of the American leader? And why did his words stir panic? As Belozov, a man often misunderstood, sat in his dimly lit office dressed in a gray suit that melded with the shadows, he embodied both danger and calm. His demeanor was unyielding, revealing nothing, a facade that masked the tempest within. The rumble of distant thunder seemed almost fitting, as if nature itself sensed the tension crackling in the air. "I'm glad to hear from you, Donald," he finally said, the chill in his voice piercing through any semblance of camaraderie. "But old friend, we both know these conversations often lead to trouble." At that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The phone call was no longer a mere discussion of politics, it was a dance on a tightrope, with Belozov and Trump teetering on the edge of restraint. Trump, ever the showman, tried to maintain control, but Belozov could feel the panic beneath his words. The stakes were rising, and silence fell between them, filled with unspoken truths and unacknowledged fears.
Do you understand, Donald?
Belozov pressed, his voice lowering to a whisper. This isn't just about us anymore. History has a way of repeating itself. His heart raced as he recalled the echoes of the past when alliances crumbled and trust was buried under the rubble of broken promises.
Trump's response was a stark reminder of the ever-present threat lurking behind diplomacy.
Sometimes, it takes a firm hand, he replied with a hint of defiance. The tone shifted again, sending shivers down Belozov's spine. What they were discussing was bigger than themselves. It was a balance of power that could tilt the world on its axis. Not every problem can be solved with a show of strength, Donald, Belozov shot back, his voice steady.
Remember, fear can be a double-edged sword.
His gaze drifted toward the city outside, where lights flickered in the distance, a reminder of the lives that hung in the balance, a reflection of the chaos that could erupt from their choices.
Then, as silence engulfed the conversation, an unexpected realization loomed like a specter.
Belozov knew they were standing on the precipice of something monumental, yet they both wore blinders, blinded by the weight of their respective nations and past grievances.
Would this be a moment of reckoning, or merely another chapter in the long saga of international intrigue?
With every paused breath, the tension mounted, promising twists that only time would reveal.
Little did they know.
Their words would ripple far beyond the confines of their conversation, igniting a fire that neither could extinguish. The tension hung thick in the air as Andrei Rymyevich Belozov sat in his chair, wearing a gray suit that blended with the dreary surroundings. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the weight of a conversation that could alter the course of history. He was a man often overshadowed by silence, but today, he was anything but mute. Just moments ago, he received a call from none other than Donald Trump, a voice on the other end that sent chills down his spine.
Can you grasp the gravity of what we're discussing? Trump's tone hinted at urgency, mixed with an almost nostalgic reflection.
We're both old friends who only reach out when trouble lurks. And today, it seems trouble has crossed into our territory.
What had Trump revealed that set off alarm bells in Belozov's mind? And what was the unsettling tone in the American's voice? Each moment stretched painfully, laden with significance. Belozov's mind raced. He wasn't prone to panic, yet the implications of the dialogue took his breath away. Do you remember the time we laughed together?
Trump continued, attempting levity in a dark situation.
But now, the stakes are higher. This isn't just talk, this is about the very survival of nations.
The air was thick with the aroma of cold metal and anticipation. Outside, the lights of Moscow glimmered, indifferent to the storm brewing within these walls. Belozov's eyes locked onto the water glass before him.
It remained undisturbed, just as he preferred his composure.
Each sound, the soft ticking of the clock, the distant hum of a bustling city, amplified the tension.
Do you recognize the importance of balance in diplomacy, Andrei?
Trump pressed, his voice rising slightly, almost trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. Your words about cooperation have grown stale, Belozov shot back, his own voice steady but simmering with discontent. America's involvement came when the final chapters of conflict were being written. You were there for the victory, but do you truly understand the price of that victory? It wasn't solely your making, Donald. As the conversation unfolded, reminders of history surfaced.
The icons of past conflicts replayed in their minds like a haunting melody.
The sacrifices of a nation were weighed against the insatiable hunger for power.
Each point of contention was a battle in itself. Did Trump really grasp the stakes? Did he know how high the price of hubris could climb?
Remember, Donald, you didn't win the war alone, Belozov stated firmly, his voice cutting like a knife through the tension.
You needed our resolve, our grit. Lend-Lease wasn't charity, it was survival instinct, a measure to keep your shores safe.
Without us, Europe would have fallen.
A heavy silence followed, the kind that echoed louder than words ever could. Would this conversation become a pivotal moment, or were they dancing around a conflict neither party was ready to ignite?
The stakes couldn't be clearer as Belozov continued, you think you understand warfare, yet you cling to notions of power instead of seeking genuine connection.
The stakes escalated.
Each statement was a carefully placed move on a battlefield, each waiting to see the other's next step.
Would this call lead to cooperation or mutually assured destruction?
The night painted itself in shades of gray, all while the clock ticked ominously on, bearing witness to this high-stakes chess game between titans. As Belozov leaned back, he felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders.
The world was at a precipice, teetering between peace and chaos. It's time to question everything you think you know, Donald. Because the truth is, the future doesn't just belong to the victors. It belongs to those willing to understand each other.
And with those final words, the line went silent.
The realization hit: this conversation was only the beginning. What would each side reveal next?
The world held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game where the stakes were far more than just national pride but the very essence of humanity itself.
5 minutes ago, a phone call changed everything. Andrei Belozov found himself on the line with Donald Trump.
"We started from the wrong point," Trump said, a reminder of the chaotic events of the past 17 days. In Moscow, tensions were brewing, and Belozov was anything but silent with his response. It ignited panic.
What did he reveal about Trump that set off alarm bells?
Stick around to unravel this intense story.
Andrei Rymyevich Belozov, his calm demeanor, the face that could hide 1,000 secrets.
He wasn't one to give away his emotions easily, but those who dared to gaze into his eyes could sense an undercurrent of danger. Dressed in a subtle gray suit, he was as inconspicuous as a shadow, yet there was an unshakable gravity to him. With every patient sip of water, the atmosphere in the room turned heavy. When Trump's familiar voice crackled through the receiver, he was eager but cautious.
"We can't ignore the momentum building, Andrei.
We have a surprise for you," his tone dripped with apprehension.
As Belozov listened, a storm of thoughts whirled inside him. What did Trump mean by surprise?
Words about gifts from nations sound nostalgic, don't they? Came a chilling acknowledgement from Trump. The unspoken weight of history loomed large.
The stakes were high. Belozov's calm facade faltered beneath the surface, stirring a conflict deeper than mere political maneuvering.
He couldn't ignore the echoes of a past where ambitions cost millions.
As he mulled over the implications,
Belozov knew that America's notion of order came at a profound price, something Trump seemed all too willing to overlook.
"You manipulate," he replied, resolve sharpening his voice. "Yet do you recognize the divide you've created between sovereignty and expansion?"
A loaded silence fell between them, a pause pregnant with tension.
Andrei's words hung in the air, a heavy reminder of the consequences of unchecked authority, hearkening back to 1941. "You may think you hold all the cards," he continued, "but history forgets no one, not even you."
Meanwhile, in Trump's corner, unease stirred.
Could he maintain the balance of power?
The modern world demanded respect, not just subsumption under a singular narrative.
The idea bubbled in Andrei's mind: could they find common ground, or was this an insurmountable chasm?
"What will your response be, Donald?" he posed finally, sensing the rift deepen. The conversation was far from over.
What would emerge as the repercussions of this exchange linger, along with the ever-present specter of history imploring both to choose wisely?